There is an ancient ongoing debate. Which is greater, studying Torah or performing a mitzvah? In other words, if you had a few spare moments and you could choose to do one or the other, which one should you do? The Talmud has a discussion about this, and the Talmud's conclusion is Gadol Talmud shemevi l'dei maaseh. Studying Torah is greater because it leads to performing a mitzvah. In other words, when you study Torah, you get to know how to perform the mitzvah, which is a strange answer, because which indeed is greater? Studying Torah is greater because it leads to doing the mitzvah. So then what's the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate greatness? Doing the mitzvah? So it seems like a bit of an unresolved answer, which it is. And the Alter Rebbe says in today's portion that the truth is Torah study and performing a mitzvah each have different virtues, different achievements. But today, in today's chapter, the Alter Rebbe highlights about a virtue, a value of Torah study which does not exist in the performance of a mitzvah, which is why it gives the value of Torah study so much weight, so much so that there's an expression in the Talmud that says studying Torah is equal to the performance of all the mitzvot put together. What is that added value of Torah study? When you perform a mitzvah, and a mitzvah is the will of the divine, the instruction of God, a command. And when you perform and obey that mitzvah, you're creating a connection with your Creator, a connection with God, in a way that God's light is clothing and enveloping your soul. You're becoming overwhelmed by, enveloped by the light and the infinite essence of God over your soul and over your whole body and your life. You know, just like when somebody very great gives you, asks a request from you, can you do something for me? And you find that ability to fulfill that request, you're creating a connection in a way that you have obeyed what they have told you to do. So the mitzvah creates the connection where the light of God overwhelms, envelops your soul. When it comes to Torah study, it's that plus more. Not only is your mind and your soul becoming enveloped by the light of God, but because of the nature of intellect and studying Torah is very different than the performance of a deed. The performance of a deed, my organs, my body are engaged in a particular behavior. It's the movement of organs, of my body. However, when it comes to study, I'm actually comprehending and internalizing the subject matter inside my mind. It's being processed within me. And so therefore, when I study Torah, not only am I becoming overwhelmed by and enveloped within the light of Hashem, but also I am clothing and enveloping the light of Hashem and the divine wisdom within my mind, within my soul, which is creating that two-layered connection we spoke about yesterday, where my mind and my soul is becoming clothed by the divine wisdom and the light of Hashem, but is also clothing and enveloping and encompassing and grasping the light of Hashem and divine wisdom, which is an unbelievable level of unity. This occurs on its deepest level when a person will truly study Torah to the extent, the full capacity of their potential, the full capacity of your mind, when you use it right and you dig deep and you work hard to try to understand as much as you can, whether it's the four levels of the Torah, the pshat, the simple level, the remez, the hints, the drush, the homiletical interpretations of the sod, of the mystical secrets of Torah. That's why there's another metaphor for Torah. We've learned about metaphors like light, like food, like water. Today we learn about another metaphor. Torah is also referred to as bread or food for the soul. It nourishes the soul. Of course, all connections with God, all mitzvot provide sustenance, but Torah provides food. What's the idea of food? There are many ways that we can take care of our health. We can exercise, we can spend time in the sun, absorbing all the amazing nutrients. And those are all very helpful. But there's something about eating and drinking healthy. When we take in that food and drink into our system, it becomes inside of us, it becomes part of us, and it fuels our blood cells and our tissue and all the other bodily organs in a way that it gives us strength, health, and life. Similarly, studying Torah bringing the wisdom of God into our minds, it nurtures us in a very internal way, just like food would. And within us, it starts to have an impact. It starts to transform our innards, our spiritual and physical innards, our mind and our heart in a very powerful way. That's why King David says in Tehillim, a verse, "V'toratcha b'toch me'ai." Your Torah, God, is inside my innards. What does he mean? I mean, it sounds very poetic, but here it makes a lot more sense. The Torah is in my innards. It's not just an act that I've performed whereby I'm becoming enveloped by the light of God, but it's actually something that I'm taking inside of me, inside of my mind and my intellect, and from within, it is changing me, elevating me, and transforming me. The Arizal, the great Kabbalist Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, says that that's why the metaphor of food is very powerful. And now we can make this distinction between a mitzvah and between Torah study. The mitzvah is compared to levush, a garment, and the Torah study to food. Now, we've learned about this levush, this garment metaphor, about something else, about the three garments of the soul, the three faculties of thought, speech, and words, which garb the faculties of the soul. Here, we're applying this metaphor in a bit of a different way. Every time you perform a mitzvah, you're creating garments to your soul. Every time you study Torah, you're providing nourishment to your soul. The difference is, and the difference is really realized not only in this world, but also in the world to come. After a person passes away and goes up to heaven, and there a soul is exposed to a complete different reality than here in this world. Because there is the revelation, the presence of the infinite light of God. That we don't have so much in this world. It's not in a revealed way. Here we're more interacting with finite revelations, expressions, creative forces of God. But in heaven, the soul encounters this intense, immense revelation of God's light. How can the soul interact with that? How does it fathom? How does it coexist within that? So all the mitzvot that we perform in this world provide protective garments for the soul, so that it's able to responsibly, in a healthy way, interact and connect with that intense, infinite light of Hashem. The Torah study does that and more. Of course, it provides the protective garments for the soul, but it also provides the internal, deeper nourishment for the soul, so that not only can you coexist with that infinite light, but you can actually appreciate it. You can actually connect with it in a way of oneness and live together with it and live by it. Now the Alter Rebbe adds one final point that is another groundbreaking idea of the Tanya. This connection, this experience that we're describing through Torah study is mostly achieved when we study Torah lishma. What does it mean to study Torah lishma? For its own sake, for a genuine reason. What's the meaning of that? So, of course, if you study Torah for a complete disingenuine reason, you're studying Torah because of the fame, the popularity, the power, the money you might receive, well, that's definitely shalol lishma, not for the right reason, and that's not a good thing at all. So you have to study Torah for the correct reasons, for genuine motivations. But what is that? And that's a debate that the Alter Rebbe had with many of his colleagues and the Hasidic colleagues and the non-Hasidic colleagues, and there's different opinions about that. Here, the Alter Rebbe lays down his groundbreaking opinion, and that is as follows. There seems to be three virtuous ways of studying Torah. One virtuous way of studying Torah is studying Torah in order to know how to perform a mitzvah. You're studying Torah as a practical guide to instruct your life. That is a very important thing to do. But that's not the highest level of Torah study which we're describing over here. That's not the highest level of Torah lishma, for a genuine motivation. The second level of studying Torah, a bit of a higher level, is not so much treating Torah only as a practical guide to teach you how to guide your mitzvot, but also of studying in order to access the information of Torah. Because the information of Torah is God's wisdom. And when you're understanding and grasping more of God's wisdom, as we've learned, it's elevating you from within. Very powerful idea as well. Again, not the highest level of Torah study. The highest level of Torah study, called the ultimate Torah lishma, is for the following agenda. The only agenda, the only goal I have with my Torah study is in order to create the deepest of connections to my Creator, to God. That's it. No personal agenda to know what to do, to know more Torah, have more knowledge, to be wiser, to be more enlightened. No, to connect with God. And the truest, deepest connection is not just with garments of God, but also with the sustenance of God, so that I am enveloped by the light of Hashem, but I'm also clothing the light of Hashem from within me. That, says the Alter Rebbe, is the ultimate goal of Torah. Recognizing that through that you achieve the most powerful, deepest connection with your Creator, more than you could achieve through performing a mitzvah. So that's a very powerful idea. It should give you a greater appreciation for when you study Torah, right? You study something and you say, well, I've learned this already, or it's not relevant to me, it's not practical to me. Well, it is, because it's doing more than instructing your life. It's doing more than just enlightening you, but it's actually creating connection points with God. My friends, have a blessed day and make it a very special one. Be well.